So we're doing cognitive services. I'm David, and this is Henry. So just how do you use this? So first of all, I'll start off with a general idea of cognitive services, and then we'll go to the hands-on. So here's like 3 quotes from the Microsoft website. So it's all about integrating like machine learning into your application, and basically trying to emulate what humans do and put it in your application. So we have stuff which ranges from natural language processing to machine learning to just stuff like when you tell like a Microsoft Amazon Echo or something like that, turn the lights off, trying to understand so the computer can understand what that actually means. So for the Microsoft Cognitive Services, there are 5 main parts. So we have vision, which is feelings and faces. So it's about detecting faces in an image, specifically what landmarks are on their faces and stuff like that. It also includes trying to understand what a person's feeling just by their picture, and it includes a whole lot of stuff which we'll go into later. Actually, I'll go to the next slide. So this is all the list of all the services they have, all 21. So then we have speech, which is basically trying to understand what person's saying. So just speech to text, but it goes a bit further than that because you can give it a sample piece of text, and you can give it a test piece, and it'll give you a confidence of how likely that person is the person. How likely it is that that's the person that's speaking. And then we go to language, which is quite a big thing. So it has spell check, it has language analysis, so decomposing sentences. It has linguistic analysis and text analysis. So what I was saying about Amazon Echo, trying to figure out when the person says, what is the weather in Cairo, trying to understand what that exactly means. So what they want. We've got knowledge, which is trying to either use like the web to trawl for information, or building your own knowledge base into a system so that users can query it. So maybe build like a AI in their in your application. And we also have recommendations. So using what a user's already been like going through in your service and trying to recommend them what they want. And then finally we have search, which is just all the Bing searches. So we have Bing image, Bing news, Bing video, Bing web, and also trying to suggest what they want from what they've searched before.
Definitely the best search engine.
So I'm just going to go into 2 of the computer vision ones. So we have a face API, which is it goes much further than you would expect for normal face detection. So instead of just like giving the location of a face, it gives up to 27 landmarks, which includes stuff like the top of their eye, their nose, their moustache, or stuff like that. It also gives estimated age. It gives estimated gender, head pose, so like the angle of their head in the photo, which is quite cool. Whether they're smiling, if they have facial hair, stuff like that, which is again quite good. And it also has so you can give it 2 photos, and it will detect whether they're the same person. So I'm going to give you like a quick demo of that. So I'll just show you generally like the API. So I have a picture of Bill Gates, obviously, and yeah, well, let me just put it in first. So there. Oh, it's too big. Oh,
Just scale it to the top.
there we go. So so there you go. I've got a picture of Bill Gates in there, and then you can see all the different things it gives you. So we have stuff like pupil right, pupil left, mouth left, mouth right, left eye outer, left. This is just coordinates of where all these places are. And if you go to the bottom, it has stuff like smile if he's smiling, so 1, moustache, beard, sideburns, and even it text it has glasses on. So it's quite a powerful API. Next we have emotion API. So it has these emotions, and it'll try to give a value between 1 and 0 of how likely that person is: angry, content, disgust, fear, happiness. And to demonstrate this, I ripped a picture off Charlie's Facebook, and you can see. Sorry.
That's me.
Yeah. Great. That's not. So yeah, this is a picture of Charlie's Facebook, and I'm going to like rip off and see what emotions it is on there. Cool. Oh, I'll just search it because I'm lazy. This is why you should use my laptop. So on the Microsoft website, you can literally just demonstrate, like it gives you like sample results for a image. So if I put that there, hopefully. So for example, if you go in Charlie, it shows anger 0.00361, and it goes down. So you can see he's a bit surprised, he's a bit sad, he's not very happy, and yeah, a bit scared as well, which is but literally. Huh?
I feel like I'm learning who Charlie really is by looking at those statistics.
Yeah. But literally you can just go. So this is definitely surprise. So we got 0.86, and yeah, it's quite a powerful API because literally you can just give it a photo, and it will just she's very happy. Yeah, and which is quite cool. Let me just drag it off. So as I was saying, emotion API. So now I'm going to hand it over with Henry, who's obviously better, to do it hands-on. So first thing, you need to go to the link which is on the Facebook.
No, it's fine. I've got subscription keys for everyone.
Oh, okay, cool.
Got some credit from Microsoft, so this is sort of
Don't do that.
Okay, so this is the bit where if you want to join in the practical, you can do. Otherwise, just watch and see how easy it is to integrate all of this into your apps. So yeah, we're going to be demonstrating on Android. So Android code is written in Java, which is obviously very good for Cambridge students who should hopefully all know Java by now. So what we're going to be doing is if I drag Android Studio over to this window. Yeah, can you see that? Is the font okay? Cool. So I don't know how many of you have worked with Android. In fact, shall we have a show of hands? How many of you have written Android apps before? Okay, a fair few numbers. So for the benefit of those of you who aren't sort of aware with it, this app is, so I wrote it the other day. It's very simple, and basically we're just going to ignore the Android specific bits. We are just going to talk about the API specific bits, and I'll try to keep the Android stuff to a minimum. Okay, so I'm going to have to slightly lean at a weird angle to see this, but so the first thing we need to do is, as David was saying, you need to have a subscription to the API. Now, this is actually a really easy process, but it requires you to confirm your email and all that, and that's a bit of a fuss. So I have got us all some keys. That's the wrong browser window. On our GitHub page at the very bottom. So if you go to github.com/Cambridge-MSP, then in the only repo we currently have on there, there will be more. If you go in there, at the very bottom, what you will see is that we have we have a couple of keys here. So when you subscribe to the API, they'll give you a key which basically identifies you as being a legitimate subscriber. We have one for the Emotion API, one for the Face API. They do work independently, but we're going to demonstrate both today. So if we just copy one of them across, let's say the Emotion one. In Android, strings are put in an XML file. So like I said, I'm going to try and keep the Android specific stuff to a minimum, but this is kind of not that avoidable. So if you go inside res values strings.xml, you'll see that I've got two placeholders for the Emotion API keys. and the face API key. Actually, sorry, before we do this, one small thing. Can you please make sure you're on the workshop branch? So the master branch has a complete working version of the app if you want to look at it later. The workshop branch has an incomplete version of the app. That is not what we want. Okay, so if you check out the workshop branch, and everything should be up to date. Cool. So if you make sure you're on the workshop branch, and then go into res values strings.xml, and you just put the API keys here. So that's the emotion API key. If we go back here, you can get the face API key.
So is everyone caught up with that? Is everyone on the workshop branch? Anyone not on the workshop branch?
I don't think I am actually.
You're not. Do you want to help out with that? Okay, so once you've done that, what we need to do is to add the Java classes for accessing the API to the project. How many of you here are familiar with Gradle by any chance? Gradle? Yeah, we've got some Gradle users there. No. Okay, so Gradle is a really useful tool for Java. It manages your dependencies and how you want to build your software. And Microsofts have made their API so you can just get it through Gradle. And in order to add everything you need for the API, all you need to do is go to Gradle scripts, and then if you go into the second build.gradle file, and then we just need to add these two lines. So compile, and then in quotes, com.microsoft.projectoxford : emotion : if you do one dot plus, that should be okay. But these two lines are all you need to add. So the first line adds the emotion API to your project, and the second one adds the face API to your project. Literally, you just need each of those lines to add each thing to your project, which is obviously super simple. If you get these messages, ignore them. And then when you press sync, Android Studio goes away, does its thing, and you will find that you have now added the emotion and face APIs to your project. Okay. This can take a while. It downloads it from the internet, but shouldn't be too long. Okay, so how do we actually then code it in Java now that we've included all of Microsoft's libraries into our project? So the file we're going to be working in, we're going to look in camera activity. So this file holds the code for the user interacting with the app and how the app should actually respond. As you can see, there's a lot of Android-y stuff which we can ignore. Feel free to look into it if you're familiar with Android. Microsoft provides a class called the Emotion Service Client, which is able to contact the API for you. So if you just add that as a variable to this class. So the private Emotion Service Client, and I've called it Emotion Client. It's probably best if you name it the same thing, just so that you can follow along a little easier. So this method here is called by Android when the app loads. So what we're going to do is we are going to create a new emotion client when we launch the app. So if you say emotion client equals new emotion service REST client, and this code here just gets your subscription key from the XML file we dumped it in. So notice also here that actually that this is an emotion service REST client, and this is actually an emotion service client. So the emotion service client is actually an abstract class, and this is an implementation of it. So that this now we now have a class which we can call methods on to access the API. Again, a little Android thing, you're not allowed to call internet stuff on the main thread of your program. So again, I've gone and created a background thread here called call emotion API task. We'll look at that in a second. If you Control F for on picture taken, you'll find this thing here. So this just calls this method when the camera's taken. Again, we're not worrying about how Android actually does all of this stuff. All you have to know is that when the user presses the button that says assess emotion, we're going to call this code here. And as you can see, I've left a to-do here. We need to call the APIs. Now, it'd be great if we could just do it from here directly using the API. But like I said, Android doesn't let us do it on the main thread. So we are going to call a new background thread. So call emotion API. So new call emotion API task. Give it the emotion client we created. And say camera activity.this in the second parameter. I'll explain what that's about. And then execute it on data. Data here is a byte array holding the image that the camera's just captured. So what this is saying is create a background thread and pass it data. Okay. So is everyone following along with what we're doing? So we've created a service client, we've initialized it, and we're now going to call a background thread and give it this client. So this is the actual thread that's going to run. So if you're going to call emotion API task, as you can see in the description, this is an asynchronous task that's going to run in the background and contact the API. This works. So again, this is Android specific stuff, but all you need to know is that the stuff you want to run in the background happens in the doing background thread, doing background method rather. And you can see we've not implemented it. So this is when we get to sort of the meat of the code, the bit that actually does the interesting stuff. So, like we did before, we gave it a byte array, which was the image, and we can retrieve the byte array here. Again, Android just knows how to get it from the main UI thread and give it to this background thread. So we have the image. What we need to do, so if we give the variable mImage a copy of the bytes, and this basically demonstrates just how easy it is to call this API within your app. So we've had a lot of boilerplate code, but this really is the bit that calls the API. If you return, so if you get the emotion client, which remember we passed it the emotion services client to this background thread, this is the copy that we gave it. Then we need to call the method recognize image. And then we need to, as you saw, it takes an input stream. This is currently an array of bytes, so we'll wrap it in a byte array input stream, which I think you cover in your 1A ticks. Is that correct? 1As? I don't know if there's any 1As here, but hopefully everyone knows what that is. And give it the image. So is everyone following what we've done there? Yep, so we've taken the emotion client, we've called recognize image on it, and we've given it the bytes, just wrapped it in an input stream, but we've basically just given it the bytes of the image. And we're returning it to this method, and as you can see from the return type, this is actually giving us a list of recognized results. So this actually is all you need to do in order to contact the API. Provided you're on a background thread and you have some bytes for an image, just call this method. You'll see it complains, it's because we need to deal with exceptions. The way we're going to deal with them here, I'm just going to say mException equals just let's just be lazy and if we just catch all exceptions and just return null, then we're all good. Which is obviously not what we meant to do, but for the purposes of this demo, that will be fine. Okay. So, like, is everyone there? Jan? Yep. Cool. Yeah. Right, so we've now got the result. As I said, what the method returns is a list of recognized result classes. Through some more magic, which I won't explain, just trust me it works, we are going to go back to on emotion result will then be called on the user interface thread. Okay, so the only reason we have to hop around all these methods is because we're having to deal with two threads. Just if you're familiar with Android, I'm sure it's fine. But if not, just ignore it. Okay, so we give it the list of results from the API, and so what we can do, what I've created here is this is a bitmap of the original photo we took. We can kind of ignore that. Ignore this. We're going to loop through all of the results from the API. And what we want to do is we want to create, so this particular app, we want to create a user interface where we take the image of every face in the picture we took and just put next to it a list of emotions. So we're going to loop through all the results. Okay, so if we fetch the results, so we're going to go through every single result. This is the result we're currently considering. Then, okay, so this bit is a fair bit of code to follow, but I think it should be okay. Okay, so we're going to create a bitmap. So bitmap's just a picture. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the original image we took from the camera, and this is basically just to show you how simple this API is, but what you can do with it. From the result, the recognized result we got back from the API, it gives us the coordinates of each face just as an integer. So this bit of code here, all it does is it crops the original photo from the picture. Okay, and then we just add it to the list that we're going to display to the user. So that's items I equals, yeah, I probably should have left this code in there, but okay, items I equals new emotion API list adapter dot items base result. Ignore that bit. Literally just says to Android, display this in a list. Just don't worry about what that necessarily means. Okay, so that's actually it. The app, if you build it, should now actually be able to recognize emotions in a picture. So to build it, you should have a run button here. If not, go down run and run app. We run it. So in my case, I have my phone attached. Okay. And I can actually show you what's on my phone. This is my phone. We'll ignore my Facebook messages. It might hopefully install someday. So this particular API is very simple. I know there was a lot of cruft there for Android-specific stuff. I know it's quite verbose, that's just Java for you. But hopefully you can see that really, in order to call the API, all you needed was 2 specific lines of code. You just needed the one that was, the emotion client dot recognize, and then you got back a whole list of results.
Do you use this API with other stuff than Android, like in Python?
You can do. Okay, yes, that's an interesting point. So there are a lot of SDKs. If you go on the Cognitive Services website, it's all listed. We have there are APIs for iOS, for Android, just Java without Android. You've got them for, I think there is a Python one. There's ones for pretty much every popular platform.
What about Swift?
Swift, I don't think there's a Swift one, sadly. Yeah, I think maybe one of you could write one, but there isn't one currently available. They do accept them from the community, it looks like. So yeah, mine's now built. It will hopefully install. There we go. There we go. So this is what my one sees. I guess we should probably test it. Oh. Should probably. Cool. Right. Shall we test this out then? Hopefully the faces are big enough. Let's go there. I think the faces are close to there. There we go. So it's, as you can see, like we did, we so we cropped the faces. So you saw the 4 lines we used to crop the image. That's what that did there in the corner where you can see I've cropped the faces. Yeah, so I don't know what your name is, but yeah, basically neutral. Jan looking slightly confused. Sadly, there's not a confused parameter, but yeah, mainly angry seems to be the dominant one there. Yeah. Sorry, no, happy. No, sorry, you're mainly neutral. Sorry, yeah. So yeah, as you can see, so the other thing is it detects multiple faces. Johnny, how much time do you have left, by the way?
I mean, we said we'd finish now, but...
Yeah. Okay, so I think what we'll do is there is actually a second demonstration for the face API, which I think we don't have time to go through, but as you saw, it's quite simple. You only need a few lines of code to add emotion recognition. It's the same with adding face recognition. So the other thing I was going to demonstrate was how you can check how much you look like Charlie Crisp, basically.
Measure of crispiness.
Measure of crispiness. Yeah. So if you look on the app and there's a button that says assess crispiness, that is actually what it is. We sadly don't have time for that. Maybe that's for another workshop. But if you do want to have a look at the code for how you assess your crispiness, do feel free to go through the repo. I guess I'll just talk a little bit, just in sort of hand-wavy terms about it. Every face recognized by the client is given an ID. So if you compare 2 faces, you can just say to the client, the face with this ID and the face with this ID, how similar are they? We actually, because we want to compare it with Charlie's face, I've actually included in all of your projects this beautiful picture of Charlie. If you go in res raw charlie.jpg, you all have now pictures of Charlie on your laptop. So it's just going to.
My idea, by the way.
So it's just going to take this face, give it an ID. Then when you take a photo, it'll extract all the faces and that'll give all those faces IDs, and you can just say the face with Charlie's ID and the face with the IDs in the picture. How similar are they? Literally, again, I think it is actually about 8 lines of code to do this whole thing, and it is actually used by people before people ask, does anyone actually use the cognitive services? So a very good example, Uber. I don't know if you, I don't really use Uber myself, but when they verify if the passengers or the drivers are who they say they are, they actually use the cognitive services, this particular API, to assess is it who they say they are. It is actually a remarkably accurate measure. As you saw, you could even tell Bill Gates is Bill Gates. I think the picture was 30 years apart, something like that. So yeah, definitely do have a look at these. These are a really quick and easy way of adding some really cool features to your app. If anyone does want to know how to do the face recognition stuff, come talk to me and I can walk you through the code as well. But I think that's all we have time for.
Yeah, well, thank you very much.